Good morning, everyone. I know I can't hear you, can't see you, but I know you're there. How's everyone doing? If we haven't had a chance to meet yet, we still haven't. Well, not in person anyway, but soon. I hope very, very soon. If you're joining us for the first time, I want to introduce myself. My name's Garry. I'm one of the pastors here. Welcome to the Meeting Place live stream, and I really, really do hope that we get to meet one day soon face to face. As you can tell, we're in a different location here, as Julian mentioned, due to the directives by the government this past week, which mainly for us, what had impacted us the most was public gatherings of 250 being lowered to 50 people, required us to move. So earlier in the week, some staff and volunteers went in. We grabbed all our recording equipment and came over here to this place that is affectionately known as the Underground. So named because, well, it's underground. It's in the basement of an office building not far from where we meet on Sunday mornings. It's, as Julian mentioned, where the youth and the young adults meet on a regular basis, as well as the music team. And we're so glad that we actually have this facility that we can keep coming to you live as we kind of navigate these strange times that we find ourselves in. Now, although we're not physically together, it's really cool knowing that we're joining in together all over central Nanaimo and beyond. We had somebody from Antigua say they were joining us this morning, so welcome Antigua. I wish I could kind of beam myself back the other way and join you on the beach, but we're really glad that you're here with us. Something really cool happened last week. It was our first official full live stream service, and what some of you did is you sent pictures to me. You texted me some pictures of you guys watching, and you know what? That was so encouraging for me. And so we're asking you to do that today. Just snap a picture. If you've got some of the phone numbers of the staff, feel free to text them, or just text on the address on the screen, admin@themeetingplace.org, and we'll share those with you because they really are encouraging. It's really cool to see how people are taking this service in. Hey, last week, was that not stellar weather? Spring definitely sprung. You could feel it was nothing better than just feeling that warm sun on the skin, your head, your shoulders. For me, some people say there's nothing better, but there's one thing that's better for me than feeling the sun on my skin, and it's this: a hot shower. I love a hot shower. It's like the best for me. It's like a fresh start. It's rejuvenating. I just love the feel of the hot water pounding against the back of my neck and across my shoulders. It just seems to kind of grab all the stressors, all the concerns, all the worries, and just washes them down the drain. Now, something else that happens when I'm in the shower is I don't sing better, because I don't sing well out of the shower, so I don't sing any better in the shower, but I think better. And maybe you find the same is true. You go in the shower and all of a sudden all these ideas start coming. Well, that's what happens to me. I'll be struggling trying to come up with an idea or a thought, and I'll have a shower and all of a sudden they just start coming at me. And as a matter of fact, I've come up with a lot of ideas for Sunday morning messages in the shower. So have that picture in your head, which is only fair given that I get to deliver these messages with the thoughts of how some of you might be dressed or not dressed taking in this service. So it's fair's fair, right? Now, a hot shower, like I say, is a must for me. And maybe that's why I found myself in a bit of a panic back in January, early January, when our hot water tank decided to stop making hot water. It's first world problem, I know, but you know what? The struggle is real. As luck would have it, this company that I decided to use, I'd heard they had a good reputation in town, and I thought, you know what, I'll give them a call. So I called them up and said, hey, this is what's going on. And they said, you know what, we've got someone working in your area. They should be there in no time. And I'm thinking, great. Well, within an hour, the tech shows up and says, hey, I'm here to look at your hot water tank. So I take him downstairs, show him where it is. And after about 20 minutes, he calls me down. And I come down and say, so what's up? And he goes, well, you got a couple of options. He says, the first is I can replace some of the parts and kind of get you going again, but I just don't know how long it's going to last. Your tank's kind of getting on in age. It's not totally out of there yet, but it's getting close. So your second option is just replace the whole tank, and then you know you're good to go. So I asked him, well, what would you do if you were me? And you know his answer, right? He says, well, I'd replace the tank. And I'm thinking, yeah, of course you would. You're not the one paying for it. And besides, isn't that what salesmen do? It's kind of that upsell thing, get the customer to buy something additional or more expensive. And so I stood there weighing my options. They were just coming out of Christmas, and I'm thinking, what do I do? Now, I don't know this guy, never met the guy before, but he seemed genuine, he seemed sincere. It didn't seem like he was trying to pull the wool over my eyes or anything like that. I had heard good things about the company that he worked for, so I thought, you know, I'm just going to take this guy at his word. And we opted for option 2, and we installed the new tank. And you know what? It's working great. But have you ever had a similar experience, you know, where you're looking to get something fixed, and so you go looking for someone that can fix it for you, somebody that you can trust, like a mechanic? It happens a lot with mechanics. I always get calls from people saying, hey, you know, I got this thing going on with my car, but I don't know who to take it to. I don't know who I can trust. And so, you know, you can kind of direct them. So maybe that's happened to you, and you've gone to this mechanic, and you've told them what's going on. And they suggest a course of action. You know, maybe you got a grinding in your wheels or something. You say, you know what, I'd just replace everything, just do a complete brake job. Now, you're at a choice point. You have to decide what you're going to do. You're going to take their word for it and trust them, or not. Well, that kind of leads right into our series that we started back at the beginning of the month called Crossroads, where what we're doing is we're looking at the lives of people found in the Bible, people much like you and I, who are just kind of making their way through life, doing their thing, when they bump into Jesus. And at that point, you know, they kind of hit a crossroads. They have to decide, what are they going to do with him? After having a conversation or two with him, and him, you know, suggesting they do something or asking them to do something, they have to decide, like, am I going to follow him? Am I going to just turn around and go back where I came? Am I just going to continue on the path I was already on? And so today we're going to look at the story of a guy who has that very thing happen. He's got something really serious going on in his life that needs fixing, and he needs help to get it fixed. And it's quite literally a matter of death for this guy. It's way more serious than a hot water tank, although the hot water tank was pretty serious. And this story takes place after Jesus' encounter with the woman at the well that we looked at a couple of weeks ago. And if you've missed any of those messages, I'd encourage you can catch up online. Encourage you to do that. But after a couple of days of staying in this town where this woman lived, Jesus continues on his journey back to his hometown that started down in Jerusalem. He was there for this massive celebration that the Jews held every year called Passover. And during this time, hundreds of thousands of Jews, wherever they were, would all congregate and flow into the capital city, Jerusalem, to celebrate how God had delivered their ancestors from slavery at the hands of the Egyptians. And it's one of the biggest celebrations on the Jewish calendar. Apparently, while Jesus was there, he was performing a bunch of miracles. He was healing people, doing a bunch of different things, and it caused quite a stir. Most of the people that were watching were pretty enraptured by it all, but the religious leaders, not so much. They kind of got into it with Jesus a little bit, kind of called him out on some things. And so Jesus goes, you know what? It's time for me I'm just going to go back home. I'm going to go back to my hometown. And that's where he goes. And on the way there, that's when he stops at this town called Sychar, where this woman at the well is. Stays there for a couple of days. And then he continues on. And that's where we're going to jump into the story. Listen to this. On the third day, Jesus left there, this town where this woman was at the well, and walked to the province of Galilee, where he was raised. As Jesus arrived in the province of Galilee, he was welcomed by people with open arms. Many of them had been in Jerusalem during the Passover festival and had witnessed firsthand the miracles he had performed. So Jesus, when he stopped in this town to meet with this woman, all the other Jewish people that were down there, they just kept going home. So they're there waiting for him to show up. And as Jesus, traveled through Galilee, he came to Cana, it's this little town, where he had turned water into wine. And it's his first miracle he's ever done, and it was at a wedding, and the groom and the bride were running out of wine, which was not a very popular thing to do at a Jewish wedding. And so Jesus helps him out, and he turns some water into wine. It's his first miracle he's ever done. Now, there's a government official in nearby Capernaum whose son was very sick. Now, Capernaum was to the northwest of where Jesus was. It's about 30 kilometers away, 8-hour walk, somewhere in there. And there's this government official. Some translations of the Bible say royal official, which is kind of interesting that that detail would be included. I mean, why include that information? What difference does it make? Right? Why not just say, does it matter what this guy did for work? Because at the end of the day, why not just say this? There was a dad in Capernaum whose son was sick. Because that's what was going on. And so I thought, it kind of piqued my interest. So I thought, I'm going to do a little digging to find out what that's all about. You know what I found out? What I found was a lot of differing opinions. There was basically two camps between biblical scholars on this. Some biblical scholars believe this guy was Jewish, which meant he would have been steeped in all the things of God and all the Jewish religion and stuff. Others believed he was a Gentile or someone that wasn't a Jew and probably had nothing to do with God. Other scholars believe this guy worked for the Roman government, who occupied that region of the Middle East at the time. Other scholars, they believe that, no, he didn't do that. He was just connected to a royal household some way. Here's what they did agree on. Regardless of this dad's national or social standing, one thing was very clear. He would have had lots of influence and resources at his disposal, which would have allowed him to be able to have the best doctors and the best care available for his son to help him get better. But as we're going to find out in the end, none of it worked. His son just kept getting worse. This father's back is against the wall. Things do not look very hopeful. And he's got nowhere left to turn. He's desperate. And then he hears about this guy named Jesus, who had done these amazing miracles. He had healed people and stuff. And so he begins to wonder, hey, hang on a second. If he did that for those people, maybe he'd be willing to help me out. And so when this man heard that Jesus arrived in Galilee from Judea, he went to him and begged him to come and heal his son, who was so close to death. When I read that, I can't help but think, and this is just me, and I'll just throw this out there for you to think about. I can't help but think that this guy has no interest whatsoever in who Jesus is, just what he can do for him. Right? But, can you blame him? How many of us here haven't found ourselves in a similar situation? When we've tried everything and our backs are against the wall and we've got nowhere to turn. I've had conversations over the years with people who have wandered into the meeting place on a Sunday morning. They got something going on in their life. And they walk in going, I have no idea what to believe about God or Jesus. I just need some help with some stuff that's going on in my life. And it's help with all kinds of things. You can fill in the blank. My marriage, I need help with my marriage. My addiction. My health, my poverty. My loneliness, my depression, my fear. One Sunday, this is quite a few years ago, I came out of the morning service and there was a guy, middle-aged guy, standing and he's kind of looking at the ceiling, he's looking around, and I hadn't seen him before, and he looked new, and so I thought, you know what, I'm going to go over and introduce myself. So I walked over and introduced myself, and right away this guy just starts sharing his story with me. And he told me about how months earlier, life was clicking along, going exactly how he thought it was going to be. He had a great job, a great marriage, just bought a house, things were going great. And then out of nowhere, everything blew up. His job was jeopardized. His marriage had blown up. It was over. He was at risk of losing custody of his kids. And he said, he says, for the last few months, I have tried everything to try and fix it. And nothing worked. And so I'm here, and in his words, he says, I'm here to give Jesus a shot. That's all I've got left. Like the man in this story, this rich official, this guy was desperate. And isn't it desperation? Isn't it the thing that drives a lot of us to God? You know, maybe that's your story. That's how you came to be at the meeting place. Maybe that's why you're tuned in right now. Desperation. This man does what any parent would do with the sick child. He beelines it for Cana. He needs to get help. It's 30 some odd kilometers away, 8-hour walk, and he gets there and he begs Jesus, you got to help me. My son needs help. Look how Jesus responds. This is like bizarre. Jesus says, unless you people see signs and wonders, Jesus told him, you will never believe. It's like, ouch. What's that about? This seems a little harsh, no? I think it does. I mean, think about this guy, this royal official. He's traveled for hours in the hot sun on a dusty road. And in desperation, he falls to his knees and he begs this lowly, dusty Jewish carpenter turned rabbi named Jesus, turns to him for help. And what happens? Jesus seemingly calls him out and berates him, which would be a rather cruel and callous response. But here's the thing. Jesus isn't speaking directly to this man. If you read throughout the narratives of Jesus, every time he's addressing a crowd, he uses the phrase, you people. And it's usually directed to the religious leaders. He's trying to call them out on something. But he uses this phrase, you people, which is like the southern, if you're in the south, it would be y'all, right? Y'all won't believe unless you see something, right? And that's what he's saying here. He's directing his comments, not just to this man, but to this crowd that is gathered to see what? Jesus in the magic show, right? They were there for one reason and one reason only, to see Jesus do stuff. And as long as they did, they were in. Listen to these words. This happened when Jesus was at the Passover. Listen to these words. While Jesus was at the Passover feast down in Jerusalem, the number of his followers began to grow, and many gave their allegiance, began to follow him because of all the miraculous signs they had seen him doing. Jesus knew that. And so when this man comes to him and asks him to do something for him, Jesus uses this moment, leverages this moment to reveal something bigger, deeper, more eternal that's going on. Unless you people see signs and wonders, you will never believe. In other words, what Jesus is saying is he's looking at these people saying, look, I love the fact that you are following me, that you're interested in me, that you believe me. But here's the thing. You're letting what I can do distract you from who I am. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying through these miracles that I'm doing. It's not for the show. It's to point you to who I am. But you're getting all caught up in the seeing is believing mindset. And here's the danger in that, is that if your belief in me is dependent on me doing things when you ask me to do them, then when I don't seemingly do something for you, it'll fall apart like a house of cards. It's called circumstantial faith. We talked about that a couple of months ago in our Anchor series. I encourage you to go back and listen online, but it's a faith that is based on the things that we can see and feel and hear around us. Unless you people see signs and wonders, you will never believe. And I just can't help but hear the desperation in Jesus' voice as he so wants these people, you and me, to know and hear this, that no matter what happens, no matter what is happening, God is good, and you can trust him to take care of you. Easier said than done, right? It's hard to hear God when life is seemingly coming apart at the seams. When you've got something going on and it's pressing in, and to try and hear God in that. I mean, it is for me. Often our reaction, isn't it like that of the official in the story who said, after Jesus had said that, he just looks at him, he says, "Sir, come down before my child dies." Yeah, Jesus is trying to teach these people something bigger and deeper about faith and trust and who he is. And all this guy hears is blah, 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 blah. And so when Jesus finishes, he just jumps in and pretty much says, "Are you done? Like, it's really cool what you're talking about, but you know what? You just need to come with me and get back to my house. So get on the camel and let's go. And if you don't want to get in the camel, I'm going to throw you over my shoulders. I'm going to carry you with me." And I love Jesus' response. "You may go, your son will live." There's no smoke. There's no mirrors. There's no magic tricks. There's no abracadabras. No religious hoops to jump through. Jesus didn't have him sign on the dotted line and say, "I want you to commit to following me the rest of your life before I do anything for you." He just gave him a simple directive. Go. It's going to be okay. And with those simple words, this man finds himself at a crossroads. He's got a choice to make. Does he take Jesus, who he's just met, at his word and do what he's asked him to do? Does he stand his ground and demand that he goes back with him to his house? Does he demand more proof, more evidence, so he can actually see? Because then when I can see, then I can believe and I can trust and I can put my faith on that. You feel the tension in this moment. I know you can feel it. Because if we're honest, we've all been there, haven't we? We've all been at the moment where we have to decide whether to trust God or not. We need to decide whether to trust God with our circumstances, whether we trust God with our finances. I mean, do I trust God with my marriage, my kids? Do I trust him enough to take him at his word and then demonstrate that trust, that belief, by doing what he's asked me to do, even though from where I'm standing, it makes no sense at all? This man is at a crossroads, and it really comes down to him and us having two choices. Insist on more evidence, keep asking questions, try and see what's going on, or exercise faith without tangible proof. So what does this man do? The man took Jesus at his word and departed. Yeah, it's a short sentence, but man, there's a lot packed in there, isn't there? This man who doesn't know Jesus chooses to believe Jesus based on nothing but his reputation and his word. That's it. That's all he's got. And again, when he leaves, there's no smoke, there's no mirrors, there's no waving of a magic wand or hands, nothing like that. No visible proof that anything has happened with his son. The only thing this man has is Jesus' word, a promise that everything's going to be okay. And so what does this man do? He takes Jesus at his word and he turns and he begins this long journey back home. And in doing so, you know what he does? He demonstrates the kind of faith and trust that Jesus wants us all to have in him. A faith and trust that's rooted in not in what or when we can see what's happening, but when we can't see, and trust God in it anyway. I love this definition of faith found in the Bible, in the New Testament book called Hebrews. We've talked about it a lot around here. It's this. Faith is confidence in what we hope for. And this man, he was hoping that his son was going to be okay. Maybe for you, you're hoping you won't lose your job, or you won't get this virus, or somebody you love won't get this virus. And it's assurance about what we do not see. This man couldn't see if anything had happened with his son, more than we can see what's happening the next hour, next minute, next day. Put another way, we talk about faith around the meeting place a lot like this. Faith is having the confidence that Jesus is who he says he is, God in the flesh. That's a Christmas story, that he came to this planet to be with us, to show us a better way to do life and connect us back to God. And that he is good, and that he can be trusted to do everything he's promised to do. And then putting that belief into action, which is exactly what this guy did when he turned and started on his journey home. And Jesus did do what he promised to do. Before this man got home, if you continue on in the story, his friends came running up to him and said, "You wouldn't believe it. You won't believe it, man. Your son is fine. He's fine." And this guy starts asking questions. He's like, What? You're kidding? No. Really? Seriously? And they're like, yeah, we're serious. We're not kidding around. Well, when? When did this all happen? And they say to him, 1 o'clock yesterday, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And right then, this guy starts putting all the dots together. And he realizes that's the exact time that Jesus said to him, "Your son will be fine." So what does God promise you? What does he promise me? What does he promise all of us? The Bible's full of promises. And I'm just going to read a few that I think are relevant, that he promises to do for us. And here they are. First off, God promises that he will never leave you or forsake you. He will never leave you. Even though circumstances around you may be saying otherwise. You know those times when you're in it and you're on your knees, you're crying out, and you're just like, where are you, God? He's there. He will never leave you, and he will never forsake you. Even if you just give up on him and turn your back on him, I'll guarantee you this, when you turn around, he will be standing there with open arms, saying, "I've been here the whole time." He will never leave you or forsake you. God promises that he is a refuge in times of trouble. Lots of that going on right now. And he cares for those who trust in him. God promises that when you go through deep waters, when you're in over your head, when there is nothing you can do, God says, "I'll be with you." When you go through rivers of difficulty, when life is hard, and you feel like you are swimming upstream and your arms are getting tired and you're ready to go under, Jesus says, "You will not drown." When we're tired and beat up and ready to just throw in the towel, God promises us rest. "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me." You don't have to take all those burdens yourself. Give them to me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. He promises us peace. Peace in the middle of the panic and calm in the chaos. Jesus says, "Peace I leave with you. My peace I give to you." You don't have to earn it. You don't have to buy it. You don't have to barter for it. I just give it to you. I do not give you as the world gives. So do not let your hearts be troubled. Hang on to that verse. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid. Even at a time right now when the world is running on fear, Jesus says, "Do not let your hearts be troubled. Do not be afraid." I don't know about you, but those sound pretty good to me, especially in light of what's going on in the world right now. And so what happened? The question is, and this is what I'll leave us with. If Jesus is who he says he is, and that he is good, and that he can be trusted to do everything he's promised to do, the question is this: will you take him at his word? Will you take him at his word? Just today. Tomorrow's got enough worry about on its own. You don't have to worry about tomorrow. Just today. Can you take Jesus at his word? And it's a question that only you can answer. Thanks for joining in. Really hope you come back next week as we continue on in this series, Crossroads. I invite you to pray with me. God, we just thank you for the promises that you make to us. We thank you that we know that we are never alone, even though sometimes it can feel like we're alone, especially in this time of social distancing. It just seems to take on a reality all on its own. I'm just so thankful that we can connect still, that the church is actually exploding through this meeting live stream. People are tuning in that would normally never tune in. And so we thank you for that, but we thank you that we don't have to fear in times like this. That we can hang our fear on the promises that you will be with us, that you'll see us through this, and that you will give us rest and calm and peace. And so I pray for those who are tuning in, I pray for all of us that we would just remember all the promises that you make us. Thank you for loving us so much that you came here to show us a better way to do life and connect us back to you. And we pray this in your name.